Good news, Void Dwellers! The elections in the UK and France were successful. And how do I know that? Because Jon Stewart said so.
Very quick congratulations to England and France, who held their elections to great success.
See, he did say that. Now, I know that's not the point of his segment, I realize that, but considering how far from reality that statement is, I think it's worth taking a moment to analyze it. Because if you live in Europe, you know, for example, that France is completely deadlocked because of a very strange and divisive election results. No party has managed to get the majority. The far left is the biggest party, Macron's moderate left is the second biggest, and Le Pen's far right party is the third. And none of those want to work with each other in a coalition government, so the country could be deadlocked until the presidential elections, which is in about what, 18 months from now? Not to mention the Jewish point of view, which is, do I want the glaringly anti-Semitic far left to rule the country? Or do I want the traditional anti-Semitic far right? Or maybe I can settle for the centrists who are just moderately anti-Semitic. I'm spoiled for choices. Two things never change about the French. When it's time to fight, they'll roll over, and they hate Jews. And then there's the British elections, where a party who won 34% of the votes gets 63% of seats in parliament, and a party who won 14% of the votes gets only 1% of the seats in parliament. And yet, a party who won 12% of the votes gets 11% of the seats in parliament. Yes, John, successful. Very successful. See, you might say that John is not European, so he doesn't really dive into the depth of European affairs. And I'd answer, yeah, exactly. He's shallow, and he stays in the shallows. The problem is that he keeps his audience in the shallows too. He views the elections as successful because all he needs to know is that his team won. He hears the far left in France and Labour in the UK, so all is well with the world. It's his people. It's the simple tribalism that you can't get away from these days. It is infesting everything, and it's everywhere. And you know, I don't remember this show being so stupid. I honestly don't know if it is that I grew up or that the show got dumber, but I suspect it's probably a little bit of both. I'm definitely not as dumb as I was 20 years ago, and this show is definitely not as smart as it used to be. My guess is that it comes down to writers. Maybe someone tried to save a buck and got some kids right out of school to write for the show, kids who don't know shit about the world. I mean, if they were educated by an American college, your dog probably knows more about foreign affairs, history, and critical thinking. And then you have the people who spearhead the show, like John. But not just him, and not just this show. And I'll tell you what, this is not just a mainstream media thing, and it's definitely not just a leftist thing. When the concept of alternative media started, and I saw people doing their own thing online on YouTube, I was delighted. As some of you might know, I am not a huge fan of mainstream media, especially news media. In fact, I think journalists are the lowest form of life on the planet. So the idea that people are going to do their own thing and we're going to hear challenging and critical voices was amazing to me. But that's not how it turned out to be. Whether it's a leftist alternative media or a right-wing one, it always ends up being the same tribalism, stupidity, and nonsense. If you're on the left, the manifesto says, all immigrants are awesome, Islamists don't exist, every man in a dress is a woman, J.K. Rowling is the devil, Jews are Armenians, Israel bad, murdering all Jews from the river to the sea good, and all leftist leaders are pure and innocent as puppies, and Biden is totally not an ancient fossil at the edge of dementia. And if you're on the right, the manifesto says all immigrants are criminals who come here to take away your country and rape all women around you. All Muslims are Islamists. No person has body dysphoria ever. Israel is always right, no matter how much Palestinians they kill, it's always justified. And all right-wing leaders are freedom fighters who totally won't have entire groups deported or murdered. And Trump, of course, is a very stable genius that never broke a law in his life. This dim-witted tribalism that is infesting us is one of the main symptoms of the thing I've been talking about repeatedly in previous videos, the way society bows down to stupid. Because the reason tribalism even exists is because you have to keep things simple for stupid to get on board. It has to be simplistic ideas, one-liners, things you can put on a placard or a hat. There's no room for subtlety anymore. There's no place for critical thinking. That is why politics have become so divisive. You don't need documentaries about it and actors to talk to you about it. It's because this divisiveness is both the result of and serves our catering to stupid. Because when everything is being reduced to a slogan and a joke, it quickly becomes a game of name-calling and finger-pointing. The entire Western world has been reduced to being children on the playground. And the problem is that the teacher, instead of being the responsible adult, is encouraging the kids to come up with even more hurtful and mean names for each other. And the dumber the better. Because then they can also sell them both guns to protect themselves from each other and ice cream to console themselves after their feelings have been hurt. No point in teaching them how to ignore insults and elevate the conversation, right? Which is why you have a famous TV host declaring a frankly frightening elections as successful. See, the truth is that Jon Stewart is basically a whore. He will say whatever it says on the prompter. To a point, I agree, to a point. If suddenly the prompter says that Jews have a right to defend themselves and their hurt means just the same as everyone else's, I'm sure he'll rebel against that, don't get me wrong. But mostly, he'll just say what's on the prompter. Jon is not the problem. If there was a way for him to make millions out of addressing smart people, maybe he would have. The system is the problem. The only way someone can become as successful as Jon Stewart or Joe Rogan or Piers Morgan or John Oliver is by dumbing things down. By bringing things down to their audience's level. And their audience is not exactly made out of critical thinkers. But they are the largest common denominator, and so they are the most profitable. Also, it's easier to sell stuff to idiots, so advertisers like that too. Now, I don't know what to do about all of this. This is not a Raz Fixes the World channel, this is a Raz Talks to the Void channel. I'm just venting. I just know that the system is broken, that the disinformation in the age of information is so prevalent, we're suffocating in it. How to navigate out of this black hole? Maybe there's someone out there smart enough to know, but we'd probably never hear of them, because they probably have more than a slogan and a joke to say. And to understand them, people would need to muster up the energy to send an electron between two synapses and actually form a thought. And there's nothing that sells less advertising time than thinking.